I truly cannot fathom why I have been chosen for this privilege, for I am but a purveyor of the technology of telecommunications and currently the head of a technology institution, the Institute of Technology, Madras. My sole but tenuous connection to the Ramakrishna Mutt is that my maternal great-grandfather, Justice P.R. Sundaram Iyer, was a member of the reception committee at Madras that received Swamiji after his triumphal return from the USA. He was also the person who, in the meeting held at Madras to condole the passing away of Swamiji in 1902, moved the resolution to set up a branch of the Sri Ramakrishna Mutt at Madras. Before I say a few words, I wanted to share a thought that I had when we were walking today in front of the Rath. It was a very moving experience. It was so nice to see so many people gathered together. The thought that I had, which I want to share with you, was if we get an occasion to do it the next time, whenever we have such an occasion, in the last leg of every such outing that Swamiji takes, when he comes back to one of his homes, I think we should switch off the engine and pull the Rath ourselves. Okay? Why should we do that? First of all, it won't move unless we pull. So that's it. We have to remind ourselves that we are there. So we have to awaken in one form. And secondly, I think there is a connection, and he'll be able to give us some energy and inspiration. I don't know if you must have read about the way in which his Guruji, Sri Ramakrishna Dev, once took him aside and touched him and gave him tremendous amount of energy and inspiration. I think by this simple act of all of us holding a rope together or carrying him on his shoulders. When he came back to Chennai from Madras, from his visit to US, to Chicago via Colombo, and when he came to Madras the train came to the station, of course he was very famous, unlike in the previous visit, and he was actually brought in a carriage, pulled by people all the way from the station to what is now called the Vivekananda Illam on the marina. So we should do the same. It will benefit us a lot, and I think it will be also more fun. So this is a small idea I would like to leave with Adhyaksha ji. Right? There may be some technology issues involved. The truck may run away, but may go very fast, but we have to take care of those things. But it will be very nice, I think, for us, small and youngsters and old people, to like our Rath Yatras, like our temple. That's how you did it. Acha, very good. So that is it's a small idea that I want to share with you. I really do not have any original words of wisdom to share or lofty thoughts to share with you. I am not capable of producing any of that. What I'll do instead is to recollect a small number of defining moments in Swami Vivekananda's life and what message they might have for us, in particular the youth of India in the new millennium. I shall also, in the course of doing this, I shall recount some of his resounding words. Every moment of his short life and every word he uttered was definitive. Not a breath was wasted. If you read everything, you'll find that it was a very short life, but every minute, every second was definitive. And my selection is not based on any particular measure of importance, but it's actually circumscribed by my limited knowledge. However, it gives me a great satisfaction that the very first words that I have wanted to allude to was the same point that Adhyaksha ji made today. So at least I'm somewhat satisfied that I seem to have chosen at least a very important aspect of what he said. Because nothing in his short but meteoric life was happenstance. Happenstance in English means just happened like that. Every event was presaged by his Guru, Sri Ramakrishna Dev. Every word he uttered and every action he undertook was intended for a specific end result. We must be very, very sure of that. We must not doubt that at all. If we have any doubt that everything Swamiji did or said was with a definite purpose, listen to what he himself had to say about this opening line that Adhyaksha ji referred to. This is what he said. He said, I address the audience as sisters and brothers of America, and you all know that they all rose to their feet. You may wonder what made them do this. He asked us the same question today. You may wonder if I had some strange power. He then went on to explain the source of the strange power. He said, I trained my mind and my thinking, because he said many other things, I have just taken some parts of it. I trained my mind and my thinking, and it developed a force so strong that nothing could resist it. In other words, he knew it was going to happen. This is something we must understand. It's not that he said that and said, how come this is all happening? Never expected it. It's not like that. He knew it was going to happen. He had trained his whole being to make that kind of impact. After that, he was feted. Feted means he was literally mobbed. Everywhere he went and spoke, and he could, if he wanted, live there all his life in the greatest luxury. This is what he himself wrote. But he was already thinking of his return to Mother India, for he said, India, with all thy faults, I love thee still. This was before what Gandhiji said after reading his works. For those amongst us who might wonder why we have been born in this ancient but sometimes difficult land, this should give some pause to our self-doubt. We must never doubt why we have been born in this land. We all know he returned to India in 1897 via Colombo, and Adhyaksha also, Mr. Nupendra Rao referred to it. And Tamil Nadu was his chosen entry point to the rest of India. Wherever he went, of course, the reception was tumultuous, for he was now not the unknown monk who came wandering 5 years earlier when he came even to Hyderabad. He was much relatively unknown then. He spent 9 days in my hometown of Chennai in that second visit, where I told you he was pulled in a carriage by the youngsters of Chennai, and he gave several public speeches. He was mobbed wherever he went. Now, his speeches in Chennai were very, very important speeches. And again, I think they were all preordained, they were all well thought out, they all had a purpose. In one of them, he cautioned us against attempts to throw off religion. There's a lot of confusion about this now, that is why I'm referring to this. He averred that we must make all and everything work through that vitality of our religion. Whichever our religion is, it could be any religion that we follow. In fact, on the 4th day of his stay, he specifically mentioned that young men should conquer the world through our spirituality and philosophy. He told a disbelieving audience that all power is within you. This was also referred to by others before me. You can do anything and everything. But the key is to do it through our spirituality and philosophy, through our religion. We must not lose sight of this in the confusion of today. He also spoke about the future of India. He stressed, as he did so many times, that education is the key. And what he said then, of course, has even more relevance today. When school syllabi and bags groan under the weight of an encyclopedic load, but without the few 10 or 20 or 30 pages on something as important as Swami Vivekananda, except for the beginning made here now. And competitive exams are all but snuffing out the light of youth in our children. Education is not, this is what he said, education is then itself. Education is not the amount of information that is put into your brain to run riot there, confusing you. Undigested all your life. Just, it's like putting something in without cooking it, all leaving it there undigested. We must have life building, man making and character making assimilation of ideas. And the goal he set was very, very modest. He said, if you have assimilated 5 ideas and made them your life and character, but that's a tough thing, to really assimilate 5 ideas. It's not like learning 5 things and writing things for 5 marks. You have to assimilate it. You have more education than any man who has got by heart a whole library. I think those speeches in Chennai were very important. Madras speeches are very important. Any of us can go back to them anytime and it'll appear as if they were spoken yesterday. After that, of course, he traveled a little bit more, but finally went back to Belur Mutt in December of 1900. But for a few travels from there, he stayed in Belur, and in 1902, you all know that he shed his body, but not before asserting that he would bring another body to complete the work. I shall not cease to work, he said in parting. I shall inspire men everywhere until the world shall know that it is one with God. So who is this other body? Who is it? It's the Ramakrishna Mutt. Okay, it was not set up on a whim. The Ramakrishna Mutt was not set up on a whim. It is tasked with a monumental objective. So here we are now, 112 years since he did that. If you read more details, you see how earnestly he went about setting up the mutt under great difficulty. If you read about how the Madras branch was set up by Sri Ramakrishna Nandaji, all that is very, very stirring. So after 112 years, in the 150th year of his birth, it's time for us to take stock. How do we carry on this great work? How do we actually, take it forward? The work of educating one and all in the true way, in the true sense, has barely begun. In fact, we are still stuck with syllabus and tons of it, and ideas, undigested ideas running around in our head. So that will take time. We can't wait for that. It all has to happen in parallel. At the same time, poverty, though it is not as grinding now as it might have been when he was traveling the land, continues to stalk our land. Man exploits man with unspeakable iniquity. And the world still awaits India's spiritual message. Remember, this is what he said is India's role. A hungry India which is not at peace with itself can hardly take this message abroad. In our own land, Bhuma Devi groans under the unbearable load of our rapaciousness, because we have lost the ability to discriminate between want and need, as Gandhiji said. The temperature has begun to rise. There is no time to be lost. We must set fear aside, muster our strength, and educate ourselves. So we don't necessarily have to go to school, take a degree. Those things we can do to make a living, but we have to get down to the business of true education, those 5 ideas, right? We have to pick up 5 important ideas, assimilate them. You can get them, any of these, you can get it from Swamiji's writings or by listening to the Swamijis of the Mutt today. Assimilate them, make them part of yourself, make them part of ourselves, and then we can get going with the business of educating ourselves. We have to teach ourselves and the world how to live and die in harmony. We have to learn to do this in an endless cycle without any sign of us having been here. See, I want to leave you with one simple thought. Our civilization, everybody at the drop of a hat says it is so many thousand years old. So we have so many, generations of ancestors. They must have all lived well, died well, different people according to their karma. But there is no sign of anything. There is no damage. Everything is back to nature. But in these last 100 years, the amount of stuff we have put up, kind of buildings, the way we have so-called developed our surroundings, this will not go away so easily. This is all, we have to do a lot of thinking now how to make this a sustainable way of living. There's a big challenge. So we have to do all of that and learn how to manage, how to keep our wants, how to fulfill our wants but fulfill our needs but keep our wants to a minimum. And we have to learn how to lead this cycle of life and death in an endless cycle without leaving any mess behind. Then only we can say we are in harmony with all of life. This is something we have to learn. This is, whatever I've said is true for any young person today in any land. In fact, even more in the West, where this kind of unbalanced living is probably even more prevalent. But for the youth of India are special. The reason is, the youth in India today are born in an era when India is reawakening. 50% of Indians in India are in the youth category. So much of what India becomes and what India does in the next 30 years will depend on the youth of today. We have to transition from a nation with lots of poor people to one where everyone is contented and leads a sustainable, healthy life. This does not mean that we will transition to a nation of wealthy citizens like some of the advanced economies. That would be unsustainable for such a large population of ours. And our mother Bhudevi just cannot bear the burden. We will also become very unhealthy in the process. And the travails of healthcare in America will visit us 100-fold. So each of us has to be quite smart, each of you actually, the younger people have to be quite smart and wise in ensuring that we do not go from one form of misery, which is poverty and want, as a wisecrack said, to the opposite kind of misery, which is the misery due to excess. But from where are we going to get such wisdom? Especially after 200 years or so of mental slavery and sleep in between, where we lost our connect with our past. So it looks very difficult, but can you imagine in 1897, when Swami Vivekananda foretold that India would be free within 50 years in the most unforeseen circumstances. This is exactly what he said. India would be free within 50 years in the most unforeseen circumstances. And when did we get independence? Within 50 years. Okay? He is not an astrologer. It's just that it is possible. And so we can turn to Swamiji for wisdom on how to make this smart transition that I alluded to. We can also take heart, take optimism in the fact there is no doubt that India will reinvent itself. Why am I saying this? Because that also he has said. He has averred that India would once again become a great nation, and till now he has not gone wrong in anything he has said. So there is no reason for us to doubt. But this is not going to come like a laddu from heaven. Strong and resurgent India is not going to be handed to us on a platter. We, or more correctly the youth, are going to have to make it a reality. And for this we have to make a few course corrections to what is going on today. I think Swamiji never shied away from hammering away at our failings and exhorting us to set things right. So in that context I'll recall a few of the things he said. One important thing he said was, he described India's national ideals. He said India has some national ideals. In fact, he said somewhere that all nations and races have certain inherent ideals. And India's ideals, he said, are renunciation and service. If we do not follow a path that is uniquely suited to us, is that same sheep and lion thing. You have got to take a path that is uniquely suited to us, otherwise you will fail. It is not in the Prakriti. As an example of what he meant, he had actually, I don't know how many of you know that the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore was set up by Sir Jamshedji Tata based on a letter that was written to him by Swami Vivekananda actually. He actually wrote to Sir Tata to set up an Indian Institute of Science Institute. But he said more. He asked him in that letter to populate it with faculty who would live and work with an ascetic fervor. He didn't mean to populate it with monks, but he said they must live and work with an ascetic fervor. But that was not the way. If you took science institutes of like Oxford or Cambridge, that second part was not there. They were all good science institutes, but they were not required to work with an ascetic fervor. He did not ask Sir Tata to just hire the best people in the world by paying them whatever they wanted. That's what you could have done. Sir Tata had enough money. He could have just asked the best scientists to come here. Instead, he felt that in the Indian context, it was important that the scientists working there should renounce and serve. And I'll come back to this again a little later. The second thing he said is that we must have faith in ourselves, what he called Shraddha. He wanted us to have that energy, that love of independence, that spirit of self-reliance, that immovable fortitude, that dexterity in action, that bond of unity of purpose, that thirst for improvement, and that intense spirit of activity. I am quoting this because it's so lovely in English. It's difficult, it's too long to even absorb in one reading like this. So I'm not going to go over it, but I'm sure you can go find it on your own, go over it in your own way and understand it. The current young generation in India, whether it understands all this or not, does, however, believe in itself. That is the good part. This has been noticed by many social scientists also, and this can-do attitude is quite palpable, and that's a good thing actually. This is quite a major departure from the attitude of even the previous generation. And that is one reason why I personally am hopeful that Swamiji's prophecy about India will come true, not 100 years from now, but maybe in the next 20, 30 years itself. The third thing he pointed out was the need for economic growth. Material civilization, he said, nay, even luxury, is necessary to create work for everyone. Contrary to what a superficial reading might convey, this does not contradict his earlier exhortation to renounce and serve. Food and basic needs have to be provided before education, and for this, material wealth is required. However, once we have enough to live decently and get educated, Swamiji wanted us to put the nation and others before ourselves. Not because this is noble, I mean that is a good reason, but not just because of that, but because if we do not do this, he said we Indians are not going to succeed in building a strong India. It is in our DNA to renounce and serve, and we must act according to our Prakriti. Any other approach is doomed to failure. That means if we try the route taken by other nations elsewhere of setting up the system of incentives, rewards, all those things, that's not going to work. Our approach has to be based on renunciation and service. So the path of renunciation and service is essentially a spiritual path, and the spiritual path is intimately tied to religion. In religion lies the vitality of India. Remember, I started with this, and I think this is something very important. Why I am saying this is, there is in many quarters an attempt to paper over all this, that it is, I don't think there are other, we can try other routes, but knowing how right he has been in everything, I think we'll probably find out that we will fail. It's much better to go by what he said and go on the path of, what Gandhiji also averred, which is enough for everyone's need but not for everyone's greed. And take the path of renunciation and service in every one of us. Renunciation and service doesn't mean becoming a monk. Like Dr. Sri Rao said, in our own capacities and whatever we are doing, put others before ourselves. Once our basic needs are taken care of, to shed our ego and think of ourselves as part of others, part of everything around us, and then I think everything will take care of itself. Anyway, all of these are very lofty thoughts and easy to speak, very difficult to assimilate. So each one of us has to go through that process ourselves. It's not possible for somebody else to insert it into your head or into your heart actually. So as the books are there, the thoughts are there more than the books. I think it's up to each one of us to do it. But we can go back, we can go around. While we do that, we can adopt some simple rules to live by, which can assure us that we are contributing to the national good. So, some simple rule book. Here again, Swamiji has provided a personal manifesto for each one of us. Simple rules. He identified 3 necessary traits for a man and therefore a nation to be great, man or woman. First is conviction of the power of goodness. We must be convinced that goodness is all powerful. Absence of jealousy and suspicion. And the third is helping all who try to be and to do good. So we must be convinced of the power of goodness. We must rid ourselves of jealousy and suspicion. And we must help all those who try to be good and try to do good. It's very simple. This doesn't require us to understand any complicated thoughts or, go over them and so on. I think if we adopt this and try to live by this, he gave a call to all young Indians to transform themselves into a band of fiery patriots. And of course, as you all know, he urged us to arise and awake. So even as we go about building our own lives and setting up our own families, if we follow the teachings of saints like Swami Vivekananda and build a strong India, a compassionate India and a sustainable India, then that India will become a beacon to the world, an India that will lead by example. I thank you for your patience. This occasion has given me a God-sent opportunity to share the little that I have learnt, very little that I have learnt from Swami Vivekananda with you, though I am as confused about it as many of you might be. The luminaries here on the stage, particularly the Swamijis, can, I'm sure, tell you much more and with vastly superior clarity. We just had a short example of that from Adhyakshaji today. If I have uttered anything wrong, I urge you to ignore it, and I plead with the Swamijis to forgive me. If on the other hand I have managed to make the voice of Swamiji ring in your ears here and there, I would consider my time well spent. May Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Swami Vivekananda, all our gurus, and my own gurus, Sri Muthukrishna Swami and Mataji Vittamma, bless us all. Thank you.